Hello everyone, my name is Charlie Taylor and I'm the CEO and founder of Debut. Thank you very much for joining our webinar today. We are going to explore what we call the Cambridge Analytica effect, specifically the challenges and potentials of how data and early talent attraction come together. We will also be presenting some really exciting cutting edge research that we have been carrying out, which combines personalities and various other emotional states of students when they come to apply for the beginning of their career. And then we'll be finishing with a Q&A, so feel free to submit your questions at any time during the webinar and we'll do our very best to answer them in the end. So just before we begin and take a deep dive into the content, I'd like to set the scene and give you some context for what we're talking about today. In 2016, a little-known British consultancy firm played a hidden but pivotal role in pulling off one of the most unexpected outcomes in the history of global politics. Whatever we might think about the ethical and legal implications of how Cambridge Analytica gathered, processed, and then used data harvested from Facebook, the reality is that the manipulation of the US election was probably one of the single most successful data-informed marketing campaigns of all time. In fact, it seems like there was more than just one such campaign where they had such a huge impact. We know of the UK Brexit referendum and a number of others that have come out the woodwork since Cambridge Analytica's role in the US election was revealed earlier this year. Now, although we don't know the true extent of their activities, ultimately, Cambridge Analytica, through their big data powered digital marketing, helped change the course of human history on multiple occasions. To be clear, we're in no way endorsing their activities, and we're not even here to discuss the morality or the legal consideration of what they were involved in. Instead, what we want to do is focus on how the successful use of data can alter the way that people think and behave. So just to be really clear, we're not endorsing their activities. Instead, we're looking at how the use of data can alter the way that people think and then behave. So regardless of what we think about their actions and the considerations just mentioned, it worked. So what exactly did they do? Well, the facts are not completely clear, but the general picture is as follows. So Cambridge Analytica deployed a personality quiz on Facebook. This was developed by a Cambridge University psychology department researcher that allowed them to harvest data from 270,000 people. And by taking part, these 270,000 people had granted access to their profiles, connections of 87 million people. Now, even with this amount of data, you've still got the huge task of communicating to those people and distributing a message that influences them. So with the quiz results, Cambridge Analytica had a model of various personality types within their sample that could be applied to the wider population. Where this comes alive is that they use the test results combined with demographic data to create segments of people within the population grouped by similarities in personality or location or other data points, and then tested these segments to see how those people reacted and their concerns for what we call hot button topics, test the likeliness of certain behaviors such as sharing or engaging in discussions online. Then what they did is they used what they had learned and using targeted social media campaigns, they then ultimately spread messages and content to those groups who would respond to it and carry out the desired behavior or desired call to action. And all of this supercharged their messaging and results. So basically, they got access to a huge amount of people. They created the psychology professor from Cambridge created a model to test personality types. They applied it to a wider sample population group, and then combine those test results with other data such as demographics to create segments, of which they then used a marketing campaign and social media campaigns to ultimately spread messages and influence various demographics to carry out a desired behavior. So this all sounds quite scary, and here on this webinar, most of us are working within tech and graduate recruitment, and we're not here to be political masterminds. So what we don't want to end up being the case is that we become a case study in political history seminars for the rest of the time. Actually, what we wanted to do was to see if we could break down the model that they used and actually apply it to solve some of the data challenges in graduate recruitment. So if you think about it, students are engaging with content, they're engaging with us. How can we use data to influence their behavior to a call to action, for example, applying? So what I want you to imagine is, what would it be like if we could apply the Cambridge Analytica model to graduate recruitment? Well, this is exactly what we're in the process of doing. And shortly, Matt will get to some great research that we've carried out on looking at those types of personalities when it comes to influencing desired behaviors. Briefly, what we need to consider first is the rapidly changing environment that we're operating in. The outcome of the Cambridge Analytica saga, alongside other high-profile data topics in the press, such as GDPR, breaches and hacks at some of our most trusted brands, such as eBay, Equifax, Yahoo, the public has never been more aware of the role and value that data in modern business society plays. And this, alongside with increased political pressure and regulation, are among reasons for changes in our everyday attitudes to our data. And rightly so. We've been cavalier about data for too long. People are considering who to trust and with what, and there are an increasing number of ways for people to take control, be it through cookie settings, deleting your profiles, forget me buttons, more prominent opt-outs, or even just basic education campaigns. So if it wasn't hard enough before, it sure is now. It's getting harder and harder to gather data, and the user has more control. But this is better for everyone involved, as the stakes are really high with personal data, and we as good ethical businesses should want to be ethical with data. Now, graduate recruitment is an industry where there is huge potential for data to improve the experience for both sides of the marketplace, the employer and the students. And we owe it to the students, whose attention we demand, to increase our understanding and application of data to improve personalization, relevancy, and overall candidate experience. So today we're going to explore how recruiters can do three things. Number one, gather data by creating a value exchange between the organization and the participant. Process the data to create segments of a wider audience that have identical or similar data points. And then finally, and the most exciting part, is then applying this process to create personalization and tailoring in the value offering, messaging and marketing campaigns to offer a better experience for the individuals in each segment. And we're looking at this through three main topics: the impact of technology, how to use data to inform talent attraction, and then lastly, how to use data to drive efficiency and improve candidate experience. So as you know, my name is Charlie. I will now be handing over to our B2B marketing manager at Debut, Ricky, who will talk you through some of the impact of technology on the industry so far. And then you'll hear from Matt, who's our senior marketing manager at Debut, who will be revealing some very exciting custom research that we've been carrying out across thousands of students to understand their personality and how that can be used to influence the human decision-making process and desired behaviors. So over to you, Ricky.
Thank you, Charlie. I'm now going to talk to you about the impact of technology in the recruitment industry and the data challenges that we're all facing in this post-GDPR world. So let's think about when a new technology enters an industry. It often follows a familiar and similar pattern. Initially, the new technology doesn't really drive the efficiency that it promises. It's new and exciting, but no one really knows what it can do. Then the technology matures and it becomes more advanced. People familiarize themselves with it, and there's a boom in usage. At the moment, the recruitment industry isn't really that advanced when it comes to technology. By that, I mean that we do have the technology and the data available to improve recruitment processes, but many companies are still failing to implement and benefit from them. So let's take a look at some of the challenges we're facing with technology in the recruitment industry. Before technology, the attraction process was quite linear and it had fewer touch points, as you can see illustrated here. It was a very established and a fairly simple path. Candidates could easily learn about relevant opportunities and get to the application stage of the process. Now, however, with the introduction of numerous new technologies, there's been a boom in digital touchpoints, from smartphone apps, online job boards, employers' own websites, and especially social media. So we've identified 6 key challenges that recruiters are facing today as a result of this non-linear attraction process with multiple touchpoints. The first of the 6 challenges is a very obvious one: information overload. This is happening due to this significant increase in challenge technologies and touchpoints. For both employers and candidates alike, there's simply far more to think about these days. And while we are living with this brave new world of technology, it's clear that there will be anxiety, confusion, and misunderstanding in the short term. Next, let's consider what much of this technology is about. Almost all of them facilitate a simpler, faster, and more efficient way to communicate, which of course sounds great, but it doesn't come without complications. You know how it worked in the old world. A candidate had to go through a lot of practical hoops in order to apply for a role. These included writing a personalized cover letter, photocopying CVs, finding an employer's address, and having to manually post this application, and then wait a certain number of days or even weeks to see if they were successful. This is very different from the copy and paste, upload and send world that we live in today. Because of the huge effort required to submit a job application in the past, candidates had to prioritize fewer applications. Today, they can apply to as many roles as they like at the touch of a few buttons. The end result for many recruiters is a sifting hell. Building on from the lack of effort that's needed from candidates today comes our third challenge. Now that it's increasingly easier for candidates to send applications with minimum effort and consideration, they're probably not just doing so to your business. Candidates applying to your role are not necessarily really that interested in your company compared to the other 10 companies that they've applied to. This encourages promiscuity, and it's another challenge that drives up the volume of applications that recruiters need to sit through. But it also means that your employer brand is increasingly going to struggle to get heard. The fourth challenge in today's recruitment industry is content production. In today's online world, there's a need to constantly produce content to stay relevant and, more importantly, to be heard. It takes significant time and effort to constantly produce, publish, and optimize fresh content, but many new media channels demand this as a minimum if a business wants to be successful and continue to engage a young audience across various media platforms. A recruiter's job now expands way beyond candidate attraction and selection, because now they also need knowledge about social media and search engine optimization. As a result of the 4 challenges above comes our 5th challenge, attribution. Attribution is becoming increasingly difficult with all of these new channels and touchpoints. Imagine you're putting money behind a job post on one channel. You're promoting it on social media, writing about it on your website, and talking about it at events. When you receive an application from a candidate, you have no idea what actually persuaded that person to apply to you. You might be able to track the direct channel that the application came from, but who knows how many touch points the candidate had before they actually clicked apply. The problem with attribution means that it's increasingly difficult for HR managers and recruiters to prove and to justify where they should focus their spend and time. Last but not least is a challenge we can all relate to in this technology-enabled world, far beyond the recruitment industry. How do you keep the human touch with you in the online world? Some companies are doing an outstanding job at showing their personality online. Innocent Smoothies is a brand that continues to be mentioned in this space, And it's definitely not impossible to be human and show human personality online, but it is a lot more challenging than it used to be. Not only is it challenging to show your brand in the best possible light online, it's also a huge challenge for candidates. Candidates are trying to make their CV stand out between hundreds of others. So overall, businesses have been struggling to keep up to pace with change. And now we find ourselves with a hybrid of old processes that are incompatible with today's technology and with the behaviors of Gen Z and millennials. Many of the newer technologies are data-driven, but we still look at data in silos. So as we've seen, there are a number of challenges that we face as an industry when it comes to becoming more data-led and leveraging the potential of new technology. I'm now going to hand you over to Matt, who will talk about how we at Debut are approaching these challenges.
Thanks, Ricky. So at Debut, we face many of the same challenges as employers. Our business is a marketplace and we need to acquire thousands of engaged, relevant and high quality candidates. And our model requires candidates to provide a large amount of personal and sensitive data at a time when they're making one of the most important decisions of their lives. This is especially challenging as Debut is a new service and a disruptive and unfamiliar model for students. And essentially our challenge boils down to identifying, targeting and acquiring students cost effectively and at scale, then educating and compelling these students to download and engage with our service, whilst ensuring students trust us with their data. So we can really sympathize with the challenges that employers are facing. Now, tools like Facebook help us to reach new users, allow us to reach highly targeted audiences, but there's a big difference between knowing who you want to target and knowing what to say to them. And to get students using our platform at scale, we need a compelling message and value proposition, and this means understanding them in more detail than just knowing their Facebook likes and their basic demographics. And as Charlie pointed out, achieving this extra depth of audience understanding was what Cambridge Analytica managed to do with their personality quizzes. So to get to the detail we need at Debut, we've conducted a research project of our own. And this research project looks to uncover the complex relationship between the three main dimensions that affect a student's career search. And those are the subjects and sectors being studied by the students, their attitudes, values, and behaviors, which are all taken from the data within the Debut app, and a third dimension of the job search journey that students are on, which essentially charts their progress through university and as they begin making and actioning their career plans, including like the expectations and pain points that they can encounter on the way. And all three of these dimensions need to be understood to provide the overall holistic view of the student career search experience. Now, we hope the outcome of this research will be the insight we need to build a value proposition for our audience throughout our product and marketing that accounts for and serves the variety in their demographic, personality, and situation. And demonstrating this understanding will also allow us to engender the trust we need from our students from the very first touch point that we have with them that's so critical to gathering the data we need to serve them correctly. So where are we now? Well, at the moment, we're halfway through the research project. We've completed a quantitative survey of over 2,000 students, and we're now moving on to explore the main outcomes in more detail through a series of qualitative interviews and focus groups. So now we'll just go through some of the key findings so far. Okay, so to summarize, the main finding of the survey was that entering the careers market is primarily an emotional journey, and students can be grouped into 5 main segments across a spectrum of confidence on this journey. And this spectrum ranges from students who feel very anxious about their job search, and we've named this segment Rescue Me, on account of what they're looking for from a provider, to those who feel very self-assured and confident about securing a role. And we've named this group Empower Me. Now, we've hidden the middle segments from this presentation, and if you want to find out more about those or the whole project, you can get in touch with us after the webinar. The segments we discovered have lots of different data points that distinguish them from one another, including the subject and nature of the degree, whether it's vocational or not, and also who within their network would be likely to influence their career choices. But the biggest differentiator we discovered was their emotional state towards their career search, with each segment providing different sentiments and reflecting different challenges and frustrations about the whole process. So what does this mean? Well, there are a number of learnings that could help us to better address the needs of each group of students. For example, a student from the revenue segment is less likely to feel confident in their job search. They're less likely to know exactly what they want to do or how to go about doing it. So we can assume that they aren't yet ready to make an application. So our messaging to this segment needs to be tailored to show them that we can solve the problems that they're currently experiencing. And if we keep pushing the same message of apply, apply, apply to this portion of the audience, we're going to fail to activate them, and we're not going to provide these users with any value. And this is really important because one of the key revelations of the research was that approximately 70% of student talent is actually locked away in a low confidence state. So there's huge potential benefits to taking a tailored approach to educate these students, build their confidence, reduce their anxiety, and try to move them along the spectrum so that they are more prepared and likely to apply in the future. And it's not just the practical considerations in tailoring the message and attraction that we can benefit from when reaching new users, but to achieve the change on an industrial scale that we want, we need to look beyond building purely transactional relationships with students. And by showing that we are understanding and addressing their individual needs, we can build trust with our audience. And this trust encourages students to share more data with us. And this in turn enables us to provide a more personalized and valuable service for them. And again, this is another reason why Cambridge Analytica were so successful. They built trust among their audience and used it to deliver greater value. So to summarize, a purely transactional value proposition like get a job is unlikely to build sufficient trust or deliver sufficient value. Understanding the user and their situation in granular detail enables us to build a far more compelling educational program that can address both the emotional and practical needs of a student audience. And this in turn engenders trust and delivers more value to the end user. So to tell you why all of this is important, I'll hand back over to Charlie.
Thanks, Matt. So really what's important right now is traditionally a hiring funnel looks like this on the screen right now. So at the top of the funnel, you have attraction, you spend your budget, you market, you go to career fairs, you spend above the line advertising, and you get thousands of people applying to your organization, of which you then put through selection. Those that get through, you offer and hire and then onboard. And that's what we call the traditional hiring funnel. And that is where recruiters sift hundreds, if not thousands, of irrelevant applications. So far, the early talent process has been a pull process. So you place your position out there, whatever job boards you see fit, and you receive thousands of applications, and you then determine which people go through to an interview stage. Now, this model doesn't allow for candidates to be screened prior to the application process. Broadly speaking, businesses know what they're looking for before they start the hiring process, and it must be incredibly frustrating and inefficient to have to review a high volume of applications and then start the shortlisting process only to find that you have people coming through that are not suitable at all. What's really exciting is that if we are able to understand the complex emotional states of students as they embark on the career process, in addition to sort of anchor data of things like education, social economic background, various skills and character traits, and in addition things like psychometrics and cognitive abilities, if we know this about our audience earlier on, right at the top of the attraction part of the funnel, not later on when it comes through the sifting, the whole funnel can become far more optimized. And this is where we draw the parallel to Cambridge Analytica. So they did the exact same approach to influence the right demographic to make a decision that the political organization wanted them to do. And we're doing the exact same thing, but not obviously making a political decision, but applying to the right role that's right for the students. And this, in theory, should massively reduce the size of the top of the funnel and reduce the time it takes for the candidate. And you can see in the ultimate world that a student would arrive on debut, the app would start to understand their complex emotional journey, it would start to understand their psychometrics, and it would know the employer, and it would just suggest 3 or 4 different positions to apply to, and then apply automatically for you. And the employer wouldn't have 50,000 people applying, they would have 100 people applying with a very high conversion rate to offer and to hire. And we call this the push model, whereby a business is able to proactively reach out to the right candidates even before they have applied, and get them quickly through the selection process. So before we conclude today's sessions, I'm going to leave you with 4 key takeaways. Number 1, data has the potential to revolutionize recruitment. Sounds very obvious, but for the last 15, 20 years, it hasn't happened. And it's an industry that deals with human behavior. It deals with huge demographics, psychometrics, a whole array of data. And yet for 15, 20 years, we're still in the same place. So people need to increase their risk appetite and understand just how it's happened in the consumer world. Data does have the potential to revolutionize recruitment. And by using segmentation, in-depth targeting criteria, we can optimize funnels far more effectively. Second takeaway is that consumers are increasingly taking back control of their data, or candidates in our situation. It is a candidate-driven market, and this doesn't come for free, and it's much harder than it's ever been. GDPR and the various hacking scandals that we mentioned earlier on. Takeaway 3 is gain trust and move beyond transactional value. If you really want to add value, recruiters need to understand who they are targeting, and this does mean moving beyond basic candidate criteria like their likes on Facebook, what university they went to, what degree result they have, and so forth. And then finally, aim for the long-term satisfaction. By attracting and hiring the right talent, you will ensure a better experience. And not only is it more productive and efficient, it will also help you retain your employees. From the tech space, we have seen more and more startups evolve and merge into this space that have been successful, that are about nurturing talent. There's a very famous platform called Beamery, which is a CRM system, but not for sales, but for recruitment, with the theory that you don't just make a hire when you need one. Actually, you create an ecosystem, you nurture your hiring funnels, and so when you do need talent, you can very quickly turn on that process. So aim for the long-term understanding of your audience. Okay, and we're now going to move into our Q&A.
Thank you, Charlie. We're going to be answering some of the questions we've received now. If you have any questions, you can still submit them in the chat box now. The first question we have is from Amir. He's asking, how are you going to use this research to improve your product and client performance? Charlie, can you answer that one?
Yeah, so to improve our product, Debut is very much candidate focused, very much student first. So we always want to bring out features which are going to massively increase the adoption from students using the app. So how are we going to use this research? The idea is personalization. So when you come onto Debut, everything becomes far more personalized to what you would expect, depending on your emotional state, depending on your objectives, your challenges. For employers, it's going to be increasing that funnel. So ensuring that you haven't got 50,000 people applying, you've got 1,000 people applying or 100 people applying, and it's much more effective.
Thanks, Charlie. The next question we have is from Lucy. Lucy's asking how we actually get this understanding of candidates. So she's saying, you mentioned that some people have low confidence and some people have high confidence, but how do you actually get this understanding? Matt, if you can answer that one.
Sure. Well, when we were looking at the results of the various marketing campaigns we've conducted over the past 2 years, the different levels of personalization and targeting we could apply to the messages and the creative and the user experience, we found that we were always limited by a fact that we couldn't really identify in the user level data. So it was a reasonable assumption that the differences among the individuals in the small target audiences would be impossible to identify with static demographic data, like location or subject or gender or anything like that. So what we aim to do is to understand with the research project, and I think it's probably been the most interesting revelation of the work we've been doing, is the exploration of the emotional feelings and emotional state towards various career providers and situations, and the challenges and fears and different feelings that students had to all of this, and how it changed throughout their time at university. And this came straight from the survey to students, and we split this by both debut users and non-debut users, which gave a fascinating insight as well, and also gives us a great opportunity to sort of look back on any changes that we implement to our own marketing and product after this, to see how we have moved our own audience's position through the confidence spectrum. Yeah.
Thank you, Matt. We have one more question here from Rachel. She's saying, you mentioned that we're losing the human touch today because of technology. And how do we, at Debut as an app, ensure to still seem human to the people we talk to?
I'm sure people have different opinions on this, but I don't think that we need to specifically focus or follow a guideline on being human. You know, when I use various other mobile apps, I don't go on to Deliveroo expecting you know, there to be a human touch. I think if we sort of unbundle that word, what people mean is that they expect, you know, a very personalized, intuitive experience. They expect, you know, great customer service. They expect the platform to be trustworthy and honest and have integrity, and not be, you know, trying to sell your data and do things that are a little bit ambiguous. So for us, the objective is to build, you know, basically a product that students love and becomes a companion and is an absolute necessary in finding their job process. And to achieve that, the human touch, you know, would be providing a service that has great customer care, providing a service that is very trustworthy, only collecting data that we need to, using data responsibly, ensuring quality employers are not just on the app, but are also using the app properly and not maliciously. So I think that would be sort of the question, more so about worrying about losing the human touch. So yeah, hopefully that helps.
Yeah, I think also if we can help increase the efficiencies in the overall recruitment process and help businesses reach students that are more prepared and ready to take the next step, it will give recruiters more time to spend with those individual students.
Yeah, I think lots of tech businesses out there, when they look for human touch, they want the user to feel cared for, and there are some great tech businesses that pride themselves on customer service. One that I used recently, moo.com, the business card platform, they are known for their customer service, and it can be things like speed of delivery, to, you know, the way things are presented, to aftercare, all that sort of stuff. And that's what makes the difference between the customer or the user feeling as if they're being treated like a human, rather than you know, a human touch on the actual platform itself. So yeah, I think that's all we had time for now. So we just, from the three of us, we'd just like to say thank you very much for listening. And like Matt said earlier on, if any of you are interested in finding out more from the research, please do get in touch. And we hope you will join our next webinar soon.
Thank you.
Thanks.